Oh, you are in for a treat today. My guest is Trevor Fulmer, a designer working out of Boston who's also launching a new line of rugs that are hand knotted, made of all natural materials, and timeless in their design. The main reason I wanted to have him on the show was to talk about the eco friendly, handmade aspect of these rugs and the reasons in favor of spending our design dollars in this way. But we ended up talking about so much more. Trevor has the ability to get right to the heart of things in terms of what really matters, what actually matters in the environments we create for ourselves inside our homes. This conversation for me was so energizing because of the depth to which he talks about the place design has in our larger world, and I'm really excited to be sharing it with you. Here's Trevor. Trevor Fulmer, welcome to the Slow Style Home Podcast. Lovely to have you here. We both are in the Boston area, and it's so nice to have a fellow Bostonian on the show.
I know. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this. So I think we're going to have some really fun talks today.
I love to hear that. Before we jump into my questions, tell us a little bit about why is this your passion? Why are you following this path?
I started my career in advertising and marketing. And boy, I did that for 13 years.
Wow.
And it was interesting. I was in the industry of experiential design.
Hmm.
So we would do large conferences, trade shows, product launches for some really big, well-known consumer brands and business to business brands. And being in a 3D environment, right, a 3D space and interior, there's something about that that just is all encompassing and surrounding. And I said, this is something I want to do. So again, after 13 years of being in that industry, I branched out in 2019 and launched my own interior design business.
Say a little bit more about that connection you were making I'm creating these experiences in trade shows or conferences or big, big public gatherings. How was that clicking for you that, ooh, it's the experience that matters that I want to dig into?
Yeah, there's so many individual parts of an experience. And if you think about it, it's all of the senses, right? It's seeing, touching, hearing, tasting. It's really targeting all of those senses, and that creates an experience. That creates a memory. And I think I learned that throughout that time in my creative career. And knowing its importance and applying it now to my interior design business, I think gives me a leg up
Yeah.
because I'm not designing a room. I'm designing a memory, an
Oh,
experience.
I love that. When I talk with people, I say, when they've no idea where to start with a room, let's say, one of the easiest entries into helping them just wrap their minds around what color should I choose, they always jump to color first, right? Um, is a memory. Let's go back to a memory because there's an experience there that you have some sort of emotional connection to that we need to plug into. So I love that you're bringing that up. I'm also really interested in how people define their design philosophy. And as you may know, my philosophy is slow style. On your website, you talk about a non-traditional approach your design, and I'm wondering what is it that you mean by that?
Yeah, I like to say that we're a team of non-traditionalists. And that's not necessarily our style, but that's our creative approach to
Okay.
design. We understand design principles. We understand the rules of design, right? There's balance and contrast, hierarchy, pattern, texture, rhythm, repetition. There's all of these design principles that we understand. And guess what? We strategically break them and we
Ah,
purposefully make changes to them. And I think that's what creates a dynamic space. So
yes.
that's why I like to say we're non-traditional.
I love that. And I love that it's not a style. Like you're not the, traditional versus non-traditional style. It's an approach. And breaking those rules intentionally to create a particular tension or a particular experience or feeling or whatever is it's very clear in your work. And I really love it. And we're going to get to your work. But before we do that, we're going to segue just a little bit into your newest venture, which is to start your own line of rugs. Now, why rugs? Why start a product? Why move away from working just with clients?
this kind of actually goes back to the idea of experiential or graphic design. I really wanted to marry the idea of graphic design and interior design.
Hmm.
And that baby is pretty much product design. So
Okay.
for me, I wanted to take that skill set of graphics and apply that to the interior world. And we launched our first collection called Natural Principles, which consisted of grass cloth wall coverings and rugs. And then, as you just mentioned, our recent collaboration is with Landron and Akari, and it's called Foundations. And we really wanted to pursue this idea of custom rugs because I was having a hard time finding the right rug in the right size, the right color, the right weaving technique, the right price point. And I
Yeah.
said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to figure out exactly what I need. I'm going to create it and we're going to go from there.
I love
And
it.
and I also say, you know what? That gives me the opportunity to be that non-traditionalist that I want to be.
Yeah.
So we jumped right in and we reached out to Landron and Akari to do this partnership with them. And they were excited given our background. And it's so nice to finally put these 2 years of work and this passion project,
Hmm.
put it together and finally share it with the world. It's going to be a really cool experience.
Yes. And Landry and Akari, I think they're New England centered. They have a great reputation. I mean, they are the top of the line here in our area. So I'm excited for that
Yes.
because I know the quality is going to be phenomenal. We're going to get to that. Before we do, talk a little bit more about the graphic element. Describe for us a little bit about what you were looking for that you weren't finding that you're able to now create with your own line drawings or however it is you approach it.
Yeah. I literally broke out some of my old pastels from college
So
to start
exciting.
creating my pattern. Yeah, right. It like took me all the way back to art school.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I started drawing and I said, okay, this is a room that I have. This is the floor plan, the furniture layout. This is the different approaches into that room. I create a pattern that's going to feel, connected and unique and relevant to this client.
Mm,
And that's when I really started producing this collection.
hmm.
A lot of things have very linear motions to them. Some of them have very loose kind of patterns and movements. And I think the idea of foundations, it's that strong base element, right? It's the foundation of a home. But the whole collection is also inspired by these memories, these places that
Mm.
I've experienced. So they're foundational memories for me.
I love it.
And you kind of put those together and we have this awesome collection that to me is strong and holds its own and can represent space and can give, hierarchy and feel dynamic. And it's so incredible. Obviously, they're all up on my website right now.
We'll be linking to that and share some stuff in the show notes page too. All right, I'm gonna keep going on this.
All right.
So you just mentioned some of them are very linear, some of them are more free flowing. Give us an example of when you would want to choose a linear pattern versus something that's more free flowing. So if you could describe maybe the room or the experience you're creating and how do you make that choice as a designer, not as a rug maker.
Yeah. I think that goes back to some of those design principles, right? I always like to create contrast. So if that contrast relates to a rug and a space, if my room is super structured, if there's a lot of angles, if there's ceiling drops, and if there's odd pillars in the center of the room that have been
Mm,
squared off, I
mm,
want to do a rug that's softer in shape in the corners. I want softer movements in the design of that rug. I may even want a plusher thickness of that
mm.
rug to play off the different architectural elements in that space. And then to contrast that, if it's more of a circular space, you know what? Why don't we do some hexagon shape? Why don't we
Mm.
use a rug with hard structured lines that are super contrasty? I
Hmm.
think it's all about balance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so well described. I appreciate that. And again, we'll be able to see some of these photos on the website, but it's nice to just hear it in this medium, the podcast medium about I think we can really picture what you're talking about. And the foundations aspect, which clearly you get really jazzed up when you talk about the foundations of things. And I think it's because that word, it has so many different meanings, and they all are interesting. I think that rugs are really the foundation, or can be, of a room. They can be the star of the room. They can be the thing that, and I think so many people, they tend to buy the rugs last.
Hmm.
And it's almost like an afterthought. And then because they're buying it last, they sort of shy away from the price tag of a really good rug. So how do we flip that on its head? Can you talk a little bit about, from a design perspective, why is a rug so important to a room? What does it do for a room?
I think the base of the room, when people walk into a space, it's a tactile feeling when you walk in. What are you stepping on? Is it a tile? Is it wood? Is it some type of natural stone? Is it a porcelain? Is it a rug? And I think that almost establishes that initial approach, that initial movement into a space.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
And it really does ground, pun intended, ground
right.
the room, right? The foundation of the room. And I think that's why rugs are so important. And sometimes if you start with the rug and almost work up in the room,
Yeah.
I think it can change the whole perspective on how that room will turn out.
That is so important to hear. Yes, absolutely. All right, let's talk about the rugs themselves. One aspect of your rugs that I was so excited to see was there, you have this eco-friendly sort of mandate
Hmm.
going on here. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Tell us about the pieces of it that are a little bit better for our planet, maybe better for
Yeah.
our health in terms of, what we're breathing in, and why that was important to you.
Yeah, it's both of our collections. First, our Natural Principles collection. The whole idea of natural principles is all inspired by those untouched, perfect shapes found in nature.
Mm,
And that was really the starting point. And Foundations has kind of followed that same nature inspired, very natural juxtaposition of home industry and placement of nature and of connecting with nature. And our hero visual for our Foundations campaign are these rugs in the middle of a forest and
yeah,
with like this beautiful sun glow coming in. And it is that contrast, right? Or I guess we're going
yeah,
back to design principles
right,
again.
right, right.
But yeah, that's ultimately the inspiration for it. And it's so important to embrace, I think, what we have on this planet as our collective home
Mm,
and respect what we have. And we've all seen the amount of waste that comes out of projects.
yes.
I did some research, and interior design generates 10.5 million tons of waste every year in the US alone.
Wow. I knew it was bad. I didn't know the exact
And
number. It's crushing.
yeah, and then almost 40% of global carbon emissions come from the building and construction industry.
Mm.
Like these are big numbers,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
and
we have a huge impact. We are making a huge impact. We need to take some responsibility for it.
it's cringeworthy. It really is. And for me, as small as I am in this vast field, I want to be part of that remedy. I want to be part of the solution. I want to figure out how to reduce our impact. And so building rugs, designing rugs, producing rugs that are as eco-friendly as possible is important. So my collaboration with Landry and Akari, we use only natural resources. There's no synthetic chemical-based materials. Everything is natural. It is wool and it is silk.
Mm.
So wool obviously is natural, renewable, biodegradable. It's planet friendly. Eventually, after people enjoy these rugs, after decades of use, it will go in a landfill, right? But guess what? As it biodegrades, it's safe. And something also that I love about wool is that it's an ocean friendly element, right?
Mm.
This isn't gonna destroy our waters, our oceans. As an avid ocean guy, go put me on a beach for days, please. Protecting the water is also super important for me.
Yeah.
And I think we each have a responsibility to source smartly and make the right decisions in our homes for our clients.
Right, right. And I do talk about this. I want to talk about it more, but I've started to really talk about this idea, the cradle to grave idea, where you are, when you look at a product and you
Yeah.
start, how is it first, how are the natural materials or the synthetic materials first acquired?
Mhm.
What impact does that have on then the working conditions of the people? How is it made? Then how is it packaged? Then how is it shipped? Then how is the packaging gotten rid of? How is the final product then? In the grave part is, how does the final product die?
Yeah.
And said, you said that when it eventually does go into a landfill, it's going to biodegrade. It's not going to be, and there's no chemicals leaching into the earth. It actually is going to fall apart. But I would argue, and I know you weren't saying this, but you said it'd be around for decades. It could be around for a lot longer than that,
Oh yeah,
as
absolutely.
many antique rugs are, because of how well it's made. And that's the other piece I really want to talk to you about this rug collection is, tell us a little bit about how it's made. You mentioned a little bit about hand weaving. Give us some sense of the handcrafted aspect of these rugs.
Yeah, all of these rugs are handmade. The wool is hand spun, the knots are hand tied. So this entire collection has a high knot count anywhere from 100 up to 120. And these are durable rugs. These are not machine-made synthetic-based rug that you're going to find on a big online retailer. These are personal. These are created by craftsmen and makers. They are thoughtful and they support local industries in Nepal, in India, and these people are supported well. And I think that's really, really important. We are one world.
Yeah.
We connect so easily around the globe in moments. So being able to support global businesses, I think is smart and support the small guy too. You
Yeah.
know, so many rugs from these big manufacturers, they're mass marketed, they are low quality, they're synthetic. And I found this other statistic that said 89% of discarded carpets end up in a landfill.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by that because I think there's a disposable decor mentality around rugs. I think it's because they were sort of maybe chosen as an afterthought to begin with,
Mm,
that they feel more like, I'm putting a rug down here just because I need a rug. It doesn't, I don't, it's maybe shiny because it's synthetic. It, wears out
yeah,
quickly. And so
yeah,
therefore I can just get rid of it. What else would one do with it if it's not a high quality rug other than put it in a landfill? If it's high quality, you might try to sell it or give it away or auction it
right.
off or
Consign it,
something. But yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's so true. And I think if people have the mentality that rugs are important, rugs have longevity, rugs are a part of our daily lives, then hopefully that thought process will change and people will think it through more and invest into a quality piece.
yeah. I think something people are afraid of, understandably, the way they are with any big purchase for their home. They're afraid they're going to get tired of it. Your rugs are very, I would describe them as contemporary in design. There's some of them are kind of minimalistic, and therefore, I think they have the ability to morph with different, if you're moving house to house, right?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about trends. How do we avoid choosing like the trendy design?
Yeah. Sometimes I think the word trend gets a bad rap. Like biophilic design, where you're bringing the outside in, is a trend, right? But that's not a bad thing.
True.
Uh, the idea of advancements in light, like we're seeing trends with different light styles, different bulbs, different configurations now that there's so many advancements in lighting. Is it a trend? Yes. But is it a trend that's going to stay? Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
So I caution clients when they use the word trend because I don't think it's always a bad thing, and I feel like it often gets a bad rap. Now, personally, for our rugs, for our style, yes, they're definitely more contemporary. But I think we've also been really thoughtful with the patterns of them, with the colorways we use on them, because they can feel more timeless
hmm,
in those colors. They can feel beautifully monochromatic in a space. They can act as that foundational element that is there. But guess what? You can easily change out the furniture color palette, the wall covering, the paint color, the metal tones, the wood finishes. You know,
yes,
there's a lot of ways that that you can design a room around an existing piece, right?
Yes.
That's what you do, right? Slow
Yes.
style home. It's the idea of
Absolutely.
bringing something new. Yeah, bringing something new into the space to already complement what's there.
Yeah.
And I think when you have a high quality rug, you want to keep it and change small elements throughout the space.
So we're getting there in this conversation about this idea that I hold on to, which is that a signature style is found in how someone individually combines their things. You know, not just choosing what the objects are, but then how you're going to put them together. And I've noticed in your work, for example, that your rooms tend to feel contemporary and that there's a lot of neutral colors going on. They're full of different textures, which I think that's why they're not sterile in any way, because there's so much texture. But then you also have these bits of antique pieces that you pull in. And I love that. Why do you do that? What is it doing for your room? You know, where is that coming from?
Yeah. I think the word antique is really interesting too, because I think when we think of antiques from like my grandmother's era, now we're talking really old. You can also think of an antique as something from the 60s or 70s, right?
Yes, the
And it's
80s.
it's just
Yes.
interesting to think of the 80s. Yeah. It's like the time frame of antique has almost evolved. And to go back to my grandmother here, she was an avid antique, and my aunt is also an avid antiquer, and I think they both rubbed off on me a little bit.
Yeah, your
We
rooms are very layered, even though they sometimes first impression is, oh, it's kind of minimalistic, it's kind of contemporary, but when you look closer, and I'm sure this is even more so in person, there are all these layers. And like I said, I think texture has a lot to do with that, but also just these little bits of things that you weave in. And I love a room that where you don't notice everything at once. I love a room where you've been in it for like an hour having coffee with somebody, and then you look over and like, oh, I didn't even see that. That's a surprise.
Yeah, yeah. We're creative and we're playful and we think an interior should be a good time. It doesn't need to be stodgy or stuffy.
Right.
Like, have a great time. Let's incorporate these beautiful pieces that are brand new
Yeah.
and then let's mix them in with some epic found pieces, from wherever.
Yeah.
We had another wonderful client who actually worked in the Peace Corps for 30 plus years over in
Oh,
Asia.
wow.
And yeah, they had this incredible earliest 20th century hand carved antique Chinese chair.
Yeah.
And not only that beautiful chair, but they had all of these gold rings that we incorporated. We hung some on the walls. We had them as room dividers. I mean, that's what we want to do. We want to tell a person's story,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
think your interior is the backdrop to your life story. It should address the past. And it should motivate you for your future. That's what
Mm.
an interior should do. You should walk in, you should be inspired.
That is so beautifully put. It's so beautifully put. And I say a lot, the process of playing with things in your home and changing things out and hanging things differently. It is about who you've been,
Mhm.
who you are, and who you want to become.
Yeah,
And
it's
and
an
I
evolution story.
it is, and I think that's another thing that I'm just putting words to when I look at the photos of your work is there's an action to it. Like it's not static, is what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
There's movement, and we talked about movement even with the rug and like whether or not it's going to be geometric and whether or not it's going to be free flowing. So there's that kind of a movement, but there's also a movement in terms of I think the story. There's a living, breathing human living there, and I think you really pull that out. And that is, I think that's a hallmark of a great design. It's what we want all of our rooms to feel like.
Yeah.
Um,
And I love that word story that you just said because there are so many stories to be told in one space. It's the story of how you walk into a space, how you navigate it, right?
yeah.
What is the floor plan? It's the story of that individual piece, right? That ottoman. Why did you choose that wood finish with that fabric or that leather, that upholstery? Why did you choose that? And then collectively, it's the story of everything you're seeing in the space and how that relates back to the client
Yeah.
and tells their story. There's so many different stories in an individual space, and I think that's what makes it beautiful. and
Yeah.
compelling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm on a mission to get rid of all generic homes. So, because I don't think people like being in them. I really don't. I think that
Oh.
we are inundated with generic. It's everywhere, and it's now so easily accessible in terms of the price point.
Mm.
So we're now seeing just one home after another that looks the same. And so this conversation I think is so great and so important because well, you're getting me excited about everything you're saying, the layers and the stories and and that's why I love doing this podcast. We have to wrap up, even though I don't really want to, but we're going to wrap up with the question that's just very simple. What is exciting you right now about the world of design, and kind of relating to the rest of our larger culture, the larger world?
Yeah, I think some of the things that I'm really excited about and seeing a lot of are sculptural designs
Mm,
in interiors. It's not structured,
hmm
it's not even curvaceous, it's simply freeform.
hmm
And I think that there is something very playful about that, which again, that's my whole interior. I love playfulness. I think they spark creativity.
Yeah.
They inspire. They're unique. They they encourage exploration. And
Yes.
so I love this idea of sculptural elements. Something that we briefly touched on earlier too is lighting. I really
Yeah.
think we're in this lighting revolution, and we've seen this for the past decade of advancements in technology with lighting. Lighting can be rope. Lighting
Yeah.
can be in the floor. Of course, it's in the ceiling. It's on the walls. I mean, what you can do with lighting now is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And to go back to that whole sensory provoking experience in a room, lighting is a key factor. And I think lighting really does create an ambiance. And
Oh,
at one point, it used to be functional, but now it's almost more ambiance. Yeah, and I just
yes.
think that's so inspiring right now.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah,
else
if the rug is the foundation of the room, the lighting is sort of the mood. It's the
yeah,
ambiance. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, the mood of the space.
yeah.
Absolutely. And one other thing too, before we end here, I think it's important to remember that we're all here to do good work and we're all
hmm
here to support each other and uplift each other. And having that sense of community, having that mutual respect for people,
hmm
admiration, and simply being kind,
mm.
I think take you places you have no idea.
Kindness is everything. It is in every aspect of our lives. I believe it is everything.
Mm.
Do you think this is sort of new-ish, that there's more sense of collaboration or at least support than the design community has been in the past? Or are you just recognizing it that it exists?
I mean, I think there's probably some of both. I think I've had some incredible mentors and designers who took me under their wings when I was very young and inexperienced. And I am still very close with them. And I've had people reach out to me, and I've kind of been that mentor for them, which is crazy, very full
Isn't
circle
that
moment.
great? Yeah, yeah.
But just in general, I think there's so much talent and there's so much knowledge out there. Why not share it?
hmm
Why not surround yourself with people who are motivated and creative and strong and passionate? Like
Yeah.
that's only going to make you better.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. This has been such an uplifting conversation. Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to meet you. I am so excited that at the prospect of meeting you in person since we're so close. Thank you
Can't
so much
wait.
for your time today, Trevor.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to see you in person soon too.